rules. Other than please take part. If I don't pick up your hand or see if you're around, then the team will have a look at that and hopefully stop the conversation. Feel free to put a comment in the chat, and we'll handle those. So without further much ado, our moderator this morning is Liesel Hesse again. So thank you, Liesel, for managing the. As I said, our standard guests are John. Gerard is on controls, and Johan and Cherise are in the panel as well. So I found this image, and this is pretty much what most organizations look like when we talk about document management, and we've seen this reaction on many fronts, especially when you talk to the real document controllers. So the organization thinks they're okay, but behind the scenes, things are not looking so good, and the chaos that lies behind an organization is often visible through when things start happening, and when documents start becoming relevant, and when the wheels start falling off. So this morning we're going to talk a little bit about that, and about how to set up for document control so that things don't look like this, and we actually are able to control the chaos. Now, just a little bit of a note to the panel. What is the main reason for doc control? I mean, what are the biggest risks of not having a good document control around?
I would say non-compliance. I think that's the biggest risk from a legal standpoint.
Right. So compliance is, it will keep you out of jail, right?
Yeah.
So yes, absolutely. And I think it's an underappreciated risk in managing documents, is that at some point you're going to need those documents, and it's often when you least expect it. And the problem is you don't know which ones are the ones you're going to need. And especially in the project management arena, as well as the other areas of business, you don't know when the problems are going to come, and you don't know when that documentation becomes an issue. And this documentation stretches through the length and breadth of the organization. So every single department has a range of documents that they need to maintain. And when we talk about compliance, it's throughout the organization. When we talk about legal aspects, it's throughout the organization. And we need to understand that when some things turn out badly, the risk is that we need documentation in compliance. Now, Johan and
Stephen?
John. Yes, Johan.
Sorry. What I want to add as well is I think we've seen on Monday when we went to see a client, the current chaos that they are in because of their system not being updated to the latest drawings to run a plant operational. So currently, this is a big issue that a lot of companies don't look at that. It's easy just to put documents in and think you're up to date until the crucial moment arises and failure starts happening, and you realize you do not have the latest documentation, which can lead to an incident or accidents that happens.
Correct. So they don't even know what's coming. So in this specific instance, it's a client who's got a very poor handover from the project into the operations, and they literally haven't got drawings to run the facility with. It's a biomass to energy facility, and they've got some really big problems. And if they have an accident, or if there's a major technical issue, they're going to have some major issues. So we're going to be helping them out with that, looking through redlining and making sure that documentation is up to speed. but they're already incurring financial losses as a result of the documentation. Now, Johan, maybe just a comment on the financial losses. I mean, the plant downtime is often directly related to the lack of
That's correct.
documentation.
Yes. That if for a plant such as this, if it stands for an hour, it's R1 million gone down the drain. So
Right.
it's not supposed to be standing still. It's supposed to be operating 24/7.
Right, so technical fault finding is the problem here, as well as normal data book information that was supposed to be captured from the procurement phase of the project, which just doesn't exist.
I feel it's a lack of a project management system. You'd be surprised, especially during training, when I hear clients speak about the fact that they're still working via email and working with Excel, with document management on a huge project. Definitely you'll have the wrong information, documents will be lost, information will be incorrect. It's all about finding those documents at a later date. It's near impossible working with what they're currently working with. So when we are doing training, when we are introducing the KEY360 document management platform, it's a huge shock to them that it can actually be this easy, to load 50 documents in a couple of minutes and still find them 5 years later if you need to. So I think that's the key aspect, is a lack of any sort of project management system.
Correct. Right, so let's dive into that. So loss control and compliance and legal are the worst case scenarios when we're dealing with documentation. But it rolls into all other areas of the organization. So literally the ability of the organization to be able to do their job is influenced. So the next question is doc control really that important? And I mean, obviously we've now unpacked a little part of it. Cherise, is doc control really that important? I mean, what's the bottom line here?
I think, as we said, if you'd like to stay out of jail, I think it's important.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think definitely. We did say that it's one of the main components, one of the main key aspects of doc control within a project and within a company, is making sure that you're fully auditable. If you can find that documents, if for some instance you get into some sorts of legal requirements, it's also helping the productivity of that specific project. Where are you loading your documents? How are you retrieving your documents? Can you find the latest revision? So yeah, I would say it's crucial. 100, that's the word I was looking for. Thank you. It is crucial in any sort of company to have your document management system.
And then also to add to it, again, we've seen on Monday at the client, because of the client's currently going through an audit process, and although they are busy with a big court case, they started looking for an example, all the electrical certificates after the compliances were signed off by the EPCM contractor, and they couldn't find it. Luckily, there was a different depository they used in order for them to find and to pass this audit process. And thanks to that information that was available, because otherwise they would have had to go through the whole process again.
Yeah. I'd say, Stephen, it's important because it ensures data accuracy, it ensures compliance with the regulations, it ensures operational efficiency, it covers your risk and collaboration within an organization.
Right, so that touches on workflow, right?
Correct.
So the document is actually a big part of the process of moving information throughout the organization. So without the document, you're sitting with uncontrolled workflow. So I think that's an important part of it as well. We've unpacked a little bit of it. We've talked about the compliance, the proof, the audit, the forensic power of having that documentation. We've got another client who's dealing with a forensic case, a commercial claim between themselves and a contractor. The owner is our client. But what we've seen is that the availability of documentation that is well structured and inside a system is decreasing the cost of the legal fees. Because without that, the lawyers are actually spending 3 and 4 and 5 times the amount of time on a specific job. So just that saving in itself is already proving massive. This case has been going for 2.5 years and will still be a while. But the availability of documentation has saved the client millions and millions, not even talk about the savings that they will achieve when they're able to prove the case throughout that same documentation. Now, the second one I want to unpack a little bit. We're in consulting, we're in software, you might be in fabrication, you might be in project management, you might be in construction. The bottom line is documentation is a primary deliverable or product of your business. So if we're manufacturing a product for a client, we want to make sure that the quality of that product is such that we can actually deliver it to the client. Now, interestingly enough, companies do not apply the same quality and diligence to delivering documentation, even though that is the product that they're actually delivering to the client. And that I find very interesting. So if we were a fabrication process, we would take a lot of trouble to make sure that whatever we're fabricating is actually of a good quality, is the right color, is the right specification, but we don't apply the same diligence to documentation, which in a consulting environment is actually the product that we're delivering. So that's a very interesting topic, and I think the panel's comments on that concept.
I think it's very important, especially on the deliverables of the documentations, like your vendor deliverable list that you're supposed to have right from the beginning in order to understand what is the final product at the end of the day that needs to be on your system. And we've seen on numerous occasions that does not exist. People just accept whatever that comes in and do the needed final document sign off process, except that there's those detailed documents that's also important that forms part of that list, but as a handover package at the end of the project.
Now, these images that I've got on the screen here, they're not for fun. Johan and I have seen too many times that this image on the left-hand side here is literally how documents are handed over to clients on many projects, and this is what it looks like. It's a container full of documentation, and literally on Monday we saw this, an old control room, a switch room, and the documentation has been delivered into the switch room looking like this. Now, slightly better is obviously at least a handover of the documentation in a formal fashion. But obviously what we're looking for is a cloud delivery of the information, which is wrapped up and perfect. There is no documentation because all the documentation is codified and delivered to the client as you would expect for a professional organization. And we don't see this happening often enough. We're going to run through the rest of this list very quickly. Primary source of information and templates. So for an organization to run efficiently, we're transferring information between departments using documentation. And that documentation could be electronic, that could be forms. There are various types of documents, and we'll explore that in another session. But templates are also extremely important because consistency and continuously improving on the business process is part of documentation. So having the right template available and being able to use information again and again and again provides massive savings and efficiency update for clients. Then from a control and workflow perspective, so if the documentation is effective, we don't have as many feedback loops in the organization. So managing documentation effectively has a massive impact on the efficiency of workflow flowing through an organization. And this is internally as well as externally. And then obviously the last one that we talked about was loss and risk. So how do we do this? How do we actually attempt this process? Because document management is an issue for every single client. It is an environment that causes a lot of headaches, and especially in a capital project environment because it's a changing environment. So if we look at a legal firm, they often have these systems in place that have been developed over years and years and years. Whereas in the capital project space, we're consistently moving into a new office, a new environment, a new team, a new blend of organizations, and suddenly the chaos ensues. So let's unpack a little bit. What are the critical success factors for successful document control? Cherise.
I mentioned it before, and I shall say it again. A great project management system, making sure that you have a project management system that combines all of your knowledge area, because like you mentioned, doc control is central to all of them. It involves all of them. So having that kind of project management system where you don't have to log off and go find the documents and then log into something else to archive it, getting your legacy data from something else. I feel like having the right project management system that works with everything is critical again to a successful document control platform. Another thing I would also mention is having the right attitude, because introducing that system into a company, it's that attitude to change and to accept that change. Because I've noticed when we are doing training, that's one of the things that we have a little challenge. It is a bit challenging as moving from that old system that was not working. There's a reason why they need a new one. There's a reason why KEY360 is introduced into their project. But getting that attitude change and the positive attitude rather towards this new system, I think is one of the challenges that we face. So I think that is definitely one of the factors for successful doc control.
So people form a part of this chain, right? So having the right people on board is fundamental in that process.
I think also, sorry, just to add on that, Stephen, I think it's the right management that's important on this. People, yeah, that's the thing. People will always fight against change. Well, some people fight against change, but it's like I said, there's a reason this new project management system is being introduced into the company. It's the job of management to say, this is what we're doing. It's gonna be done. Accept it and make the most of it. And I think training also plays a huge part in it.
Well, I think we often underestimate the fact that people don't know why. So we need to explain to people why document control is so important before we go into the change management process and move into that environment. So you've hit the nail on the head, Cherise. The top item, in my opinion, is staffing, getting the right people. And you're right, it's at every single level of the organization, because if management understands the document is actually their manufactured deliverable, then they will apply the right processes to be able to deliver those effectively. 100%. Then the next item that I've got on my list is setup. So setup and planning are also underestimated or underappreciated in terms of running an efficient document management system and process. So the metadata, the categorization, the document numbering, and then very specifically the workflow and the RACI, the role allocation of that workflow. if that is not resolved upfront and mapped upfront, then you're going to have a flawed document management process, which influences on the quality, which influences on the efficiency of the organization, and effectively results in a very poor execution of the process.
100%.
Matching the lists to the plan obviously is important because business is around deliverables, right? And each company has a certain level of deliverables that they are delivering to another client, and that's part of the efficiency. Now, one of the items that I'd like to raise is this gap between when we are supposed to deliver an item, right, of documentation, and when that actually lands. Because what we're finding in business is that if the schedule or the date that has been applied to that deliverable is a certain date, the Rev A, which is the draft document, is completed by that date because we leave it as late as possible. And then there's still a review process to follow to get to the final. So typically what we're seeing in organizations is that every single document is being delivered late in terms of the final document. And this has a ripple effect into the project, into the organization, because consistently things are being late. So one of the critical success factors is actually having an early date as well as the final delivery date and chasing both of those dates for every single document. Right, John, let's talk about quality.
Yes.
Quality management is obviously one of the success factors of an efficient document management system. How do we
Absolutely.
certify the quality of documentation?
By checking that it's according to the standards that we apply, naming, numbering, categorization.
Right?
Yes.
How do we do that? How do we achieve that? Because people do that. They say they do that.
Yeah.
But when it's actually audited, it's not done. So you actually have to put steps in place to achieve that. And that needs to be built into the workflow, right?
Yes, absolutely.
What else? Because that's the process quality. What about the actual integrity of the document? How does that achieve its success?
Quality of documentation is of utmost important because, I mean, you can't jump between different numbers and your numbering system is not correct. I mean, that is the biggest problem that I've experienced a lot of times is people that do not understand the numbering process, what the workflow should be like in order to group them correctly, as we've seen it with a few clients that jumping all over the place to try and find a document that wasn't actually part of that numbering system, that was actually a different numbering system because it was a different system that was used, and so
Correct.
forth. That is why it's so important.
So that's part of the setup, right? That's part of the process, and then having a quality review process in place, which certifies the quality of the output.
Yes.
So as we would have, again, I'm referring to a fabrication process because it seems like we do fabrication processes, we do quality checks, and it gets a stamp on it, but we don't have the same diligence when we are producing documentation. All right. The final comment is platform, right? Because we all know that manual processes can work extremely well, are extremely reliant on the staffing that you have and the physical processes that you have. But if you employ technology well inside document management and connect it to the rest of the organization and produce the dashboards and the setup, as we've mentioned, you have a multiple times, a 10 times improvement in efficiency and time saving in the organization. And then also, technology gives you the ability to control business to business communications. So we're gonna take a step out of the presentation and have a little bit of a look at what is available in the marketplace in terms of KEY360 supporting an organization to achieve the success. Now, we've highlighted a couple of issues and a couple of points as we've gone through the discussion, but now we're going to actually see them in work process. So the one critical element is the staffing, right? So we need people that can actually operate a document control environment, and they need access and transparency of the system. Now that transparency relates to various to every person and every aspect of the organization, because documents need to be available to everybody. So the platform ability to be able to talk to the organization and provide the information is important, and that relates directly back to having a list of those documents and having them planned and named and coded effectively. So let's take a step through what we're looking at on our screen here. So the first element on the left-hand side is the metadata and the classification of documentation, right? Now, the ability to find documentation, to classify that documentation, is held up in the metadata of that data. Now, what we can see is there's some gaps here, right? So I put a little conditional formatting. This is the KEY360 platform. We highlight blanks, and we color code that for a second with a little bit of a conditional formatting. What we find is suddenly the document list highlights these items. Sorry, did I not save that effectively? Yeah, that's a good idea. Right, so I'm going to put a little bit of a conditional formatting on there.
Yeah, put 0 in.
Sorry, should we say that again?
Stephen, when you're doing the conditional formatting, instead of just deleting, put the 0 on the colors that when you're choosing your color formatting.
I see.
Yes, make sure that you put 0. You have to put something in there.
Good point.
Yes.
Or you just drag it all the way to the bottom.
Yeah. There you go.
There we go. There we go.
And just click on another
Great
line.
stuff. Right. Now, the reason I'm highlighting this is the first element that we have to take care of is the metadata structure in our organizations, right? Because we need to be able to codify extensively that metadata. And that metadata must match up with information that is in other systems in the organization. So when we look at engineering information, so this is an engineering tracking grid. The codification here must look and reference the codification inside the document management system, right? As well as information. Let's take another example. If we're looking at a Gantt, the codification of the scheduling data must also reference that exact coding structure. So what that allows us to do is have a uniform metadata structure which connects the whole business directly to document management. Now, this capability allows us to produce a very effective document metadata structure, which allows us to search information, right? The next step in the process is the document type list. Now, this seems irrelevant, but when we're trying to find information inside the organization, we must never be more than 3 searches away from finding information. So when we open up a filter, it must be very easy to be able to search and find information inside the platform, right? Now, obviously, with a paper system, this would be in a filing cabinet, which makes it easier if it's filed correctly and if it's named correctly, because exactly the same application of a filing cabinet should be applied electronically inside the platform, right? So document typing is critical. Yes, Shrees.
I'm so sorry to cut you off then. I just wanted to mention that the first point you mentioned is the staff, the correct staff. I would like to say one of the key factors is also the knowledge, the correct training, and that's why our training system is so detail orientated and so important. It's because you can have all of these tools, these amazing tools on KEY360, but if you don't know how to use them, it's useless. This technology is useless to you. So
Right.
I believe that it starts from that attitude of change. It moves over to that knowledge, getting that correct training, and then finally that utilizing the system for what it's worth. So
Exactly.
all of these the data, actually inputting the data and knowing how to input the data in all of these fields, document type, all of that is very important. So the knowledge is first before the actual work.
Correct. And the lack of coding is one of the major issues inside an organization, because we find managers who are aware of these issues inside the document management system and actually don't address them, right? So these items, these red items, mean that these documents that aren't codified literally cannot be found, right? So one of the elements of codifying documents is the ability to just find them, right? And that's part of the quality management process that we've been speaking about for the last half an hour. The next item I'd like to highlight is the document numbering, right? So document numbering is a massive subject, all right? And such a critical subject, because two things have to happen. One, the document number needs to be created on a register, whether it's in a platform or outside of a platform. That number needs to be created, and then that number needs to be actually used inside the document, right? And that process often gets lost and muddled inside an organization if you haven't got an efficient methodology of, one, creating those numbers, and two, assigning those numbers to the originator of that document, right? So in KEY360 specifically, we have designed a process around issuing what we call a submission. So a submission is effectively an instruction. Where's my submission register?
And it's
The document bucket and submissions. So you'll see in KEY360, there is literally a methodology of issuing an instruction to document control, or whoever is controlling those numbers. It may be an administrator, it may be someone else, to say, please find this doc number or issue me with this doc number. All right. And that is so critical inside the document process. And it should actually be part of the quality management process of getting this information to the originator of the document, because that streamlines the process. So we've got two elements here. The one element is effective numbering, and in KEY360 we have exceptional auto numbering capability. So you can set up the mask according to the metadata structure. We know that every organization has a different methodology, and importantly, we may have different number methodologies on the same document. So you may have a client number, you may have an engineering number, and you may have a contractor number on the same document. And your systems and your capability needs to be able to take care of supplementary document numbering. So having additional numbering capability inside the platform is extremely important to be able to facilitate that process. So if you have multiple numbering, but that numbering has to be done correctly, right? And that gives us another capability of actually managing documents inside your document management process. Now, the next element, let's drag that out of there. So the next element is the document title. Now, I can't stress this enough. The naming convention of your documents needs to be impeccable, because finding a document is around using these tools to filter and sort inside the system to be able to find a document. Now, there is so much time wasted inside an organization purely trying to find documentation, right? So I think all of us around the table have been through that, have had that frustration, and we are consistently investigating new ways to be able to get to the right documents much, much faster. We literally had another workshop this week to improve our processes and our technology even more, to extend beyond the reaches of platform to be able to get to documentation more efficiently. So connecting, we've already got the ability to connect KEY360 directly to your hard drive. So anything you have in your hard drive, we can map into KEY360. And the purpose of that process is to be able to get to documents quicker and then utilize those documents inside your efficient workflow process. So this is the importance of having the right technology and the right setup when we're talking about documentation. All right, so that's a bit of the setup. I'm going to bring another element into this while we're fiddling around here. So I'm just dragging a column around here in KEY360. You can do that. But what's important here is in KEY360, I'm just going to remove this filter for a second. In KEY360, you'll see that we have two different types of documents. The one is a planned document, which means there is no attachment inside there is no attachment yet. And what that means is in KEY360, you can register a placeholder. Now, planning document lists are a critical aspect of setup. So having an engineering list, and sometimes that engineering list or that document list for a specific project, for a specific process, can be predefined before you even start. And what's really important is being able to define various revisions of that process. So if I look at the revision number, these are all Rev zeros, right? But we have different revisions and different capabilities. So if we look at Rev A's and Rev zeros, what we can see in KEY360 is that we're able to plan a draft document as well as a final document. And this decreases the process time and increases the accuracy of delivery inside an organization. Now, I know I'm going through this pretty quickly, but it's just to give you an idea of the aspects you should be looking at when setting up your doc control system. And obviously, these planned dates can then be structured to actually tell you exactly what documents you should be delivering on every day and which revision you're actually trying to plan, right? So if I look at the revision, I can then see, okay, Rev A's, I've got 15, and these are the dates for those revisions. And then Rev Zeros, I've got those dates for those finals. Okay. Now, this may seem trivial to you. It is extremely important to run your document management processes efficiently. And eventually, you get to the point where we can actually run it in that fashion. All right, let me put that back up there. Okay, good. Right, so we're back on the screen, and we're still going through our document register. And then the final process that we need to look at is the ability to control the document revision. Now, the revision status, the workflow capability inside KEY360 is extremely important, and setting that up for success is absolutely critical. So if we look at a specific document definition, I'm just opening up a form here with the attached documentation, and I'm opening up the workflow engine inside KEY360. Now, understanding where a document is in this workflow and how many days it's actually been through this process is a critical part of document management. And all of that capability should be built into your document management process, right? And then the ability to actually determine, but who is responsible and who is working on a specific document at a specific time. So if we look at this information here, go to the field chooser, and I can see immediately who the next responsible person is, who is responsible for this workflow. So I refresh that information, and I can immediately see if anybody is assigned that workflow, and from a next due date perspective, when is the next due date available for that information? Right. So we help track that process throughout the workflow of the solution. Okay, right. So that's part of the setup, right? So we need to look at quality. We need to look at the controls. Let's jump back into the presentation. We've covered staffing. We've covered setup, the numbering, the workflow. We've covered the planning and the listing of documentation. We're going to jump into review processes in a second. And then we've started having a look at what the tech aspects of documentation is. So again, where do I start setting up document management? We've been through this list. Setup is around what is the strategy, what is the workflow. Planning, make the list. And I can't stress this enough. We don't make the list. Now, often we get the response from our client base, but I haven't got the list. And our response to that is, even if the list is 30% accurate, or 50% accurate, or 80% accurate, at least you've got a target to work towards. And the list that you had on the previous project is probably the best list for this project. And if it's managed in the right system, you would have that list available on every project and refine that list going forward. So for most organizations, they do have the list. They have a form of the list, and just putting that list down into the platform as a placeholder and scheduling that information will add massive value to the organization when you start executing whatever processes you are. All right. Now, staffing we covered and platform we covered. I'd like to jump into reviews and audits. Okay. Now, from the panel, let's talk about reviews for a second. Are reviews important?
Yes, definitely.
Why?
It's important, especially to track and control your documentation from the first document that you designed or uploaded onto the system. And there's a process that you go through in order to have a final documentation to be able to do your work correctly and prevent, as I've mentioned earlier, incidents or accidents that can happen if documents aren't reviewed from the first experience looking at a certain plant that you're working in that environment. That person is not going to know what he's touching or working on if documents aren't up to date to the latest revisions that was carried out to a final detail handover.
Correct. So the quality of the process and the quality of the actual deliverable can be controlled through a review process, right? Both from a workflow perspective, as well as, and as Cherise has mentioned a couple of times, if you have the right technology, you can actually apply online review capability. Now we know engineers, we know the old guys that prefer to have the paper drawings, the paper documents going through the process. Now, what you need to be able to do is implement a technology that looks and feels like the paper process, right? That's an important aspect. So we've developed technology around that specific requirement. So when we look at the workflow capability, we can see that just from a linear workflow perspective, we have the ability to control who sees what down that process. Now, this linear process can be extremely complex or extremely easy in terms of reviews and management of that process, right? And we can see who was responsible for that process going through. Now, this is really important, and making sure that documents actually process through that review capability. But that's not always enough, right? Because what we need to be able to do through the review process is make sure that all the stakeholders who need to be able to look at that document have the opportunity, formally and auditable, to actually comment on that document. Okay. Now, managing that process is not always easy, because in today's beautiful world, we're all sitting across the globe, and we're all sitting in different offices, and we all have different time schedules, and that requires us to move away from the paper system and move into a formalized review process capability. Now, we approach this in our technology from KEY360 perspective in a different view from other technologies. Is we're still old school ourselves, and we need to apply technology to that old school thinking. So the way we've done that is exactly the way you would run a squad check or a interdiscipline review, right? So to set up those, KEY360 facilitates the process of creating a review. Where's my review list? Document review register, and allows us to set up those reviews formally and workflow those reviews between all those different parties. So the first thing we do is we have the ability to select those documents that need to be in those reviews. We need to be able to codify that review so that we've got it timestamped. We know who the attendees were. They get an invitation to attend that review. There's a review matrix. There's some contact numbers of the originator, and the workflow of that process is also documented, right? And KEY360 electronically measures that process in terms of who attended the review online and what comments did they actually make on those items. So let's dive into that process just a little bit so that we can actually see how this works. Now,
Yes.
I'm going to jump into a review. Sorry, Johan, yes, comment.
There's just a comment there, just for Jean to read it. Reviews are also important to verify the modifications that are implemented from one person to the next. That's a comment that we also received.
That's
Okay.
actually really important, because in a session I have with the clients, well, actually with a few clients, they mentioned they want their review process to be, like you said, a squad check. They want it to be like people standing around putting their comments on the paper. They want to see the comments on that paper. And I think that's why the KEY360 review process is so important, because you actually see the comments from each person and a list of those comments. So that's basically the process they want, but obviously fully auditable, and people from different areas, someone sitting on the mine, someone sitting in the office, can review a document.
Correct. Now, what's really important, Shreeze, as you've indicated, is that the process must feel like we're sitting around a table, right? And we've got different people sitting around the table. Now, remember, in a squad check environment, we're not necessarily all around the table at the same time.
No.
That is facilitated by a post-review process, right? Whoever is the coordinator or the final indicator of that review process can put together those comments and then release those comments to the originator. So that's really old school. But online, you need to be able to go through exactly the same process. So in a KEY360 environment, this is our table. And these are the people who are making comments on this specific drawing or document, any PDF. So whether it's a QCP, whether it's a schedule, etc., they can all be reviewed in the same way. We put it on the squad check table, we invite the attendees, and the attendees then have the ability to run through this process very quickly. Now, the one thing that's important is having tools to be able to actually manage this process, right? Yes. So you need to be able to spin this and actually walk around the table, right? So I'm walking around the table, okay? And I know this is, yeah, right. So, and then we need to have a couple of annotation tools. And we also need to be able to zoom into specific areas of the item so that I can see what I'm looking at, right? Now, these are all important aspects. We need to be able to read the documentation, and then we need to be able to annotate this environment. So we've got a bunch of annotation tools, both from a highlighting perspective, and you can see the minute I'm starting to annotate on the tool, which is actually a lot easier than writing, annotate on the tool, I can then add some comments to that specific item. So please check dimensions, right? Now, please check dimensions electronically has been input into a design review comments register as well, instantly by KEY360. So not only is it appended to the drawing, it's also added to a review register, and that review register is codified. So Stephen Golding, comment 002002. So it's very easy to go back to the person who made this comment and electronically refer them back to a specification with a response. Yes, accepted, no, rejected, we're doing this, we're not doing this, we're canceling this response. So all of these tools are available in the platform to actually run through a review in much the same way as you would have done inside a paper environment while you are sitting on the other side of the planet, right? So again, we're always in a distributed environment, whether we're sitting next door in the office or we're sitting on different geographies around the planet. Okay, so this is the review process in KEY360. It also comes with the ability to build in your specific comments and review process naming conventions. So you may have an A, a B, or a C review process. You may have a specific overriding reviewer who said accepted with comments, and the workflow of this is then workflowed back to the originator, and that originator can see the PDF, they can see the levels, they can go into the document and actually turn off different layers, different reviewers, and then update the original accordingly. And more importantly, update the workflow on every single item inside the review process. Now, obviously, that seems like a long and laborious process, right? That's not true. In KEY360, you can do bulk updates. So you can update your document. You can go through the comments, select the ones that you like, and I'll show you that process in a second, and then update those comments. Now, while I'm in this area, what's really important is a lot of companies are spending a lot of money and a lot of time on acquiring different signing hub or different signing capabilities, right? Now, signing on a document is important. We need to be able to ensure that we've got audit capability around who signed documents and who's looking at documents. So in KEY360, we've also designed the capability to be able to input this information directly into the platform. So you'll see here, we've got 4 signature opportunities available on this specific document. You can see them registered here. In KEY360, you can predefine those labels into a document and who should be signing. And then KEY360 allows you to step through the process. So you'll see, as I step through the process, we've now got a highlighted signature area there. And then KEY360 allows us to input a signature into that spot. And then if I have additional signatures, I can then step through the process and simulate this. And this could be a 60-page document. I'm just doing it on a drawing now to demonstrate. And KEY360 registers those signatures as physical signatures on the drawing as if it was a design comment. And those are then embedded into the PDF. And the document is obviously versioned up to say this is a different version of the document. So technology-wise, you need to have a platform that takes care of all of that. And 30 seconds later, you can then say save and close. KEY360 opens up a workflow capability, which says, right, how do you want to score this review? I've just got one item in here which says reviewed. Do I want to send an email to the originator? Do I want to attach the documents? and who's next in the process. So I could say, well, actually want Johan to be next in the process. The next due date, I can put in if I want to say, right, I'm done with this. Comments, please expedite the final drawing. And fortunately, we've got spell check in there as well. Save and close. And that item is now taken care of electronically in terms of the versioning, the submission. And when I look back at that review, so let's do this. So I've jumped into the wrong one here. When I look back at that review, I can then see the progress of that specific review. So if I double click on that item, we can see that that review process has also been completed, right? So the workflow of the review is taken care of. And when I go into the review register, multiple reviews, yes, I know that. When we go into a review register, it's very easy to see what the review progress is. So I'm dragging and dropping a field into the review process, and we can very easily see that the review process percentages are taken care of here. So we can see that these reviews are complete, and let's fiddle around with some conditional formatting again, just because I like conditional formatting so much. That equals 100%. And I hate these green colors, so let's choose a really cool green color. All right, and that's part of the KEY360 process of managing the review process. So again, if I wanted to check which reviews have progressed in KEY360, and now I can start saying, okay, when is the review end date and what is the process of that review? So this review is 28th of May and is at 0%. And so we can start checking that information. So electronically now, I've got a wealth of information to start applying data analytics very effectively to massive design processes. All right. Okay, so let's jump back into death by PowerPoint. Right. We've talked about staffing. We've talked a little bit about reviews. And we're going to finish off the conversation with a couple of comments around what functions are not negotiable in document management. So I'm going to give you each 1 minute to pick your top functions that you would say, what are the ones that are not negotiable? What really impacts your experience of document control? Cherise.
Bulk uploading.
Right.
Yeah,
I
bulk
like
uploading.
that one.
Yeah,
Now,
me,
that's
that's
interesting.
my favorite
That's
function.
interesting because that comes from a real doc controller, right? Because you want to be able to do things fast.
Yeah.
Okay, I love
I didn't
that.
have to
John.
think about that one.
No, I like that one. That's very important because working transactionally is very slow, but you've got to have a platform where you can actually just pull in 1,000 documents, number them, code them effectively. I'm not going to show you that in KEY360 right now, but it's all there. You know it is. John, you're up.
Grouping in doc controllers. Very important.
Grouping why? What does that do for you, John?
It helps me find documents faster.
Right, so transparency, right?
Transparency, yes.
Now, you can't do grouping if it's not codified, right?
Absolutely not.
Right, so again, that's a quality check and a setup function.
Yes.
Good answer, Johan.
Mine is definitely submissions. I think submissions needs to be used more so that a doc controller can do their work more effectively and in a correct way. Because if each and every person starts using a doc register on their own, it's still going to be a shamble. You're still going to struggle to look for a document where a doc controller knows his or her environment in that field of document numbering, document naming, where to put it, what to do with it, you name it.
Now, and I love that comment, Johan, because I think that refers to email instructions, right?
Correct.
So we tend to email stuff to the doc controller if we're not doing it ourselves in the platform, which can also be done. But if there is a document controller or an administrator or a secretary or somebody who's doing the documentation, they don't get those instructions in a formalized fashion. And eventually they're under pressure because it wasn't submitted correctly, there's no feedback, and the efficiency decreases.
Yeah, that's
Right.
correct.
Now let's go through the list. Finding my docs, John, you're up. So yes, finding documentation and being able to filter that analytics is extremely important, right?
Yes.
Cherie's uploads and submissions, Johan, very important. For me, workflow and business to business collaboration is absolutely critical. I'm seeing organizations gain massive value out of being able to connect businesses from a document system perspective. So massive savings. So whether it's procurement information, whether it's fabrication information, schedules, minutes of meeting, all of these types of documents need to be shared between organizations. And if you can take that load away from email and put it directly into a structured environment, that has massive value. Right. And then my personal favorite, reports and dashboards. So having information inside an organization leads us to the ability to produce reports and dashboards because, and I hope you're all going to chime this together. What do we actually sell? Everybody together? Behavior, right?
Yeah, experience.
Behavior modification.
Yes.
Because the system,
next time.
correct, the system must facilitate behavior modification, which means people need to do things more efficiently and faster than they did it yesterday. Okay, and that leads us into accessibility, right? So selecting the right technology leads us into an environment where we have access via a desktop, we have access via mobile applications, which KEY360 has, and then mobile via a normal website where you can also access the information, right? Because you need to be able to access that information effectively. Right, I'm not going to go into quality management. We've run into time, so and we've talked a lot about this. Quality management cannot be overemphasized in quality in document management. The naming and numbering, the metadata we've had a look at, the capability to do reviews to make sure that our documents are of impeccable quality, workflow and revision control, and again reports and dashboards. And that leads us to my final slide, which are my two favorite dashboards inside a document control environment. My first one is pure statistics. And pure statistics from document control is so important for me because it tells a story about where your business and where your project is going and allows you to plan effectively. So if we've got the documents planned into KEY360 or planned on a list, we can see the load of those documents that are going through the organization, right? So immediately I can start saying, okay, this is the number of documents that we need to process. These are the number of reviews that we're going to have. So if we take that and we multiply it by a couple of times, because we know we're going to have a couple of reviews on the documents, we can plan our resources. We can plan our technology. We know how many documents are going to be transmitted to the client afterwards. So I love normal counting of documents, and systems allow us to do that on various levels. How many revision comments have we got? What revision comments actually relate back to a HAZOP or some sort of a design review process? So there's a huge amount of information to be gleaned from KEY360. And then the second one is a type of workflow environment, right? And this is a very simple dashboard, which is so effective. 5 days remaining, 4 days remaining, 3 days remaining. And so we go down into a point where items are late. So what this dashboard does is it says this person has 4 or whatever the number documents for review, or in terms of a workflow process, and they can see that coming towards them, right? So this workflow is coming towards these people. This dashboard is massively effective inside your organization, right? From a workflow perspective, as well as from a document management perspective, because they can actually see how much work they are going to have to go through during the next week or the next 2 weeks. Right. Now, this is a preemptive environment. So very seldom in an organization can you say, well, I know what I'm supposed to do next week, and I can plan effectively for that outcome. Okay, so those are my dashboards for the day. And again, dashboards are prime information for us. Again, back to the team. Why do we build dashboards? Cherise?
I don't know. I like to.
No. What's my theme?
Okay,
Behavior
so
modification, right?
behavior modification. I was going to say name and shame, but I don't want to be negative.
No. Remember, we design dashboards so that people have got information to make decisions and work more efficiently.
100%. So I think my favorite aspect is the second dashboard that was built. I'll give you an example, just a real life example. If a project manager, or rather an engineer, has 3 documents on a dashboard that is shown in the office, and he sees that they are in red, he can quickly before the meeting go and review those dashboards. And 10 minutes later, by the time the meeting comes up, those documents are gone off his name.
Right.
So for me, the best aspects about this specific reporting on KEY360 is that it's a live system. It's constantly updating. And so that's when I say name and shame. It's personal accountability for what you have, or what you're responsible for, and making sure that you see the data changing. And that's what I love about the reporting. So name and shame in a positive way. The transparency, that's the one. Yeah.
Exactly. Okay, from the panel, any Q&A from the attendees around the world, please post your questions now in the chat if you have any. Johan?
From my side, I'm happy. I think there's still a lot that companies can use, and what is so nice about that is the ideas they provide and the help that we provide them as well to give our inputs and to be more effective in the doc control system, to run a company or a construction site more effectively if it's run correctly and done in the right way.
Yeah. John?
I don't have any questions today, Stephen.
Good. Cherise?
I think you're very right when you say one session is not enough, because you really just chipped off the tip of the iceberg when it comes to what can be what is provided and what can be given with regards to this project management system.
Well, you can literally run your whole organization from doc control, right?
Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
That's the answer. That's the answer.
Yeah.
And it's true. I mean, you could literally close all the departments, whether it's HR, it's documentation. Whether it's communication, it's documentation. Whether it's a risk management, it's documentation. And I could go through every single department in an organization, plan the documents, and then execute, and your organization will be running effectively.
Especially now with the client that we were on Monday, there's a lot of documentation that was used more differently than construction. It's the way there's so many ways in which you can use it.
We're going to help keep them out of jail. It's as simple as that.
And most organizations are stressing their resource issues around inefficient resourcing. And I mean, if you use doc control sufficiently, it helps you streamline your processes, it helps you with data-driven decision-making, overall it improves communication in a company.
Right.
So,
and it's still underestimated.
Yes.
The importance, like you said, of doc control. I think it's very important for organizations to review their systems, review their processes, and centralize it.
No, great. Gerard, you had a question.
Yes, thank you, Steve. I see in the comment box here someone has asked for a demonstration regarding the part you handled earlier on reviews of documents.
Right.
And I also want to say at this point, yes, in conjunction with you and Cherise, this one session is not nearly enough. I believe we should have more sessions regarding document management specifically to have more opportunities to actually demonstrate even further in the system.
Right, and we will do that. So what's going to happen after the Q&A and after we finish with this block of the podcast, anybody who wants to stay afterwards and go into a training or a show and tell session with Gerard around document control or around any other aspect of KEY360, please stay on. We're happy to host you, and you can ask any question and get any training for the next hour that you may want to have a look at. So without much further ado, take this picture on your mobile phone, send us a message, and we'll get back to you around KEY360 or around doc control support or around consulting support, which we provide globally in project controls, administration, project management, all sorts of stuff. So give us a call. All right, and Liesel will add the Capterra message to give us a review as well, please, if you enjoyed the podcast. That's all, folks. Thanks very much, and have a beautiful evening in New Zealand and Australia, and hopefully you're almost waking up in parts of the US. So and in South Africa, have a great weekend. Thanks for joining us.